So welcome back. So we're going to look a little bit closer at how these XML files get turned into the SQL files. And this is done by something called the Sisulator. And the Sisulator uses a language called Sisula. And Sisula is a language that we created ourselves because we wanted a language in which the language itself would look a lot like the end output that you want to get. So let's say you want to produce SQL, you want the actual code to look sort of SQL-like when you do the programming. So Sisula is basically a templating language where you write your statements, but you have sort of variable substitution going on. The reasoning behind this was that in one of the previous frameworks that we built, we used another language called XSLT. And XSLT, while being a powerful language when you transform XML, suffers from being a language that looks very little like the actual end output. And that makes it difficult to manage. It's hard to find people who actually know XSLT. So that's why we decided to go with another technique. We had also built Sisula earlier for anchor modeling. So when all the SQL code that is being generated these days from the anchor modeling tool is also done using Sisula. So it was a natural choice to use Sisula for the ETL as well. So the Sisulator takes an XML file and a directive file in order to produce the output. So in the case of the workflows, it will take this workflow XML file together with this directive, and the directive contains the different Sisulets, different small Sisula templates that it will process in the order that they are specified in this directive. And each of these ones produce parts of the SQL, the final SQL that goes into the workflow SQL code. So a very basic description of how the Sisulator works is that it takes the XML file and transforms this XML file into JSON. JSON is the JavaScript object notation. So once it's in JSON, you can actually create a JavaScript object, and this object is exposed to the Sisulet, so you can actually reference that and use that in your Sisulet to do loops or produce stuff when you do that. So let's look at the first ones. Well, there's also some Sisulets here that because of JScript is a little bit behind when it comes to the JavaScript specifications, there are some functions that weren't available. So there's some polyfills. This one will just create a trimming function, escapes, some utility functions that can be useful. It does the variable substitution in one of the passes here, the one where you can actually have your own defined variables or reference environment variables. It sets up the metadata functions. Basically, I think we should go down to this one that's called create jobs, because this is the one that actually creates what goes into the SQL Server agent later. So let's look at this one. In the Sisulets folder, in the workflow folder, there's a Sisulet called create jobs. So this is what Sisula code looks like. So a Sisula code block starts with what looks like a JavaScript comment, but with an added tilde sign, and it ends also looking like a JavaScript comment, but preceded by a tilde sign. So from a JavaScript point of view, it will not disturb JavaScript because it looks like a JavaScript comment, but it's recognized as Sisula by the tilde signs. So this is the Sisula code. So this gets parsed and is created in the output file. So as you can see here, you will see something that starts with a lot of lines, and here it says $sign and workflow name. And this dollar sign will actually tell you that this is a variable, and you will reference something called the name attribute on this variable or object. So this will be replaced when you do get the final output. So if we look at the output, it should start with that comment, but as you can see in the actual file that was created, this is replaced by the workflow name here. And then you see use MSDB, and then there's a delete job thing here, where you again have this job name here. So let's go back and look at the Sisula code for that. Where was it? Create jobs over there. So you can see here, here's the delete job, and it says parameter job name equal to, and now there's a dollar sign again, job name. So you can see it's quite readable Sisula code from a coding perspective. And it looks a lot like the output that you get, although here it's actually doing a test to see if there's a job ID specified, and if there's a job ID specified, then it will produce it in the output. If not, this row will be skipped altogether. And you can intermix JavaScript with the Sisula code. Sisula code in itself has no looping construct, so loops will have to be created using JavaScript. So this while loop is iterating over all the jobs available in a certain workflow. So it should be quite straightforward anyway, and this is not a Sisula course, but it should be quite straightforward to see and understand what is going on in the different syslets. So if you should find, for example, an error, or if there's something that simple functionality that you would like to add, at least you would know where to go and start to look at where you could find that information. Alright, so that was a little bit about the Sisula engine that we have, and I think that this will actually conclude this demonstration and looking at the example files that are available within the Sisula ETL framework. And I will move on to actually doing a speed run instead. So in the next video we're going to be downloading a file that I actually haven't seen before, and we're going to take that file, create a small model, load it into a staging area, and loading it into a little bit of a data warehouse environment and see what happens. So I'm going to try to do a speed run in the next video. So see you then.